This is your communication podcast with Teresa. All right. In the words of the famous Matthew McConaughey, we are still on the rational side of persuasion, and this time around we are looking at reasoning. Now, reasoning is a wonderful, wonderful skill to have, especially if you are being logical in your reasoning and if you can bring across this logic to the people that you are talking to or writing to. And unfortunately, I do feel that my students are having a little bit of a problem showcasing their reasoning process or choosing a proper reasoning structure in their arguments. Yeah! The whole idea behind reasoning is that you're being logical in your thought process. And obviously, using evidence, what we've just talked about, is going to help you to be logical. But basically, we want to explore the possible sequences that you can use in order to arrive at a certain conclusion, or in our case, arrive at a persuasive objective. Yeah! Just in general, we distinguish between two different ways of reasoning. There is the inductive side and the deductive side. Now, I want you to listen to me very carefully because I do have a little bit of a trick for you to remember which one is which. Think of the D and the shape of the D. The D has a triangular shape with a broad base and a tip on the right-hand side of the D. Let's have a quick look at that. Deductive reasoning, as I said, moves from general, the broad base of the D, to the tip, the specific. What I mean by that is that you're starting off with a general statement and then you give specific incidences for this particular statement. An example would be, South Africans' crime rate is up. This is a general statement that I'm making, and now I'm adding specific incidences in order to back my particular claim. I would say we can see that in Johannesburg where there is a rise in pickpocketing. We can see that in Durban where there are more hijackings, and in Cape Town there are more armed robberies. So you can see the general statement was the crime rate being up, and then I give specifics. Yeah! The inductive side, we're just turning this example around because now we're reasoning from a particular premise to a general conclusion. So I would just turn around my example. Joburg's pickpocketing is up. In Durban, we see more hijackings. And in Cape Town, we have a rise in armed robberies. Therefore, we can induce that there is a higher crime rate in South Africa. Yeah! Let's have a look at some other reasoning structures that you please have to keep in mind also for your assignment writing or for your general life when you have to argue something. So the most prominent and the most used reasoning structure is cause to effect or effect to cause. I want you to practice a little bit of caution here. Just because something sounds as if it would relate to one another doesn't mean that it necessarily does. But a lot of people jump the gun when it comes to cause and effect relationships, and I don't want you to be that kind of a person. Cause and effect relationships are notoriously hard to determine for people. Think of the rather sinister example of if you were abused as a child, you will become an abuser. It's a cause and effect reasoning structure that sounds pretty sensible, but it is actually not because people are different. Just because you were abused as a child, you might have a higher probability of becoming an abuser later on, but you also might not. So please keep that in mind when you're reasoning from cause to effect or from effect to cause. Advertisers, by the way, love the effect to cause structure, and this is us coming back to persuasion. They would say something like, look at Kelly, she's lost 50 kilos. So that is the effect, and then they are moving to the cause, which usually has to do with some sort of miracle drug or miracle supplement or something like that. You know it better than I do. Yeah! Here we go. Then we have reasoning from comparison. That's a wonderful reasoning structure, but once again, careful because the world is a complex place. Just because something is similar, it might not mean that it is similar in other respects as well. But I'll give you the example of the casinos. You all know that there is a casino in Caledon. So this casino is along the lines of a very frequently traveled route, which is the N2. Caledon Casino is doing very well for itself because it is on such a high traffic road. Now, people might want to look at building a casino in Colesberg too. Now, Colesberg and Caledon have a lot in common. They are halfway points between two metropolises in South Africa. Caledon is the halfway point between Cape Town and Knysna, or Cape Town and Platte, whereas Colesberg is the halfway point between Cape Town and Johannesburg. So if you reason by comparison, you would say something like, Caledon is doing well as a casino because it is the halfway point between two travel destinations and it's situated right next to the highway. Colesberg has the same characteristics, therefore it would be feasible for us to actually build a casino there as well. Makes perfect sense, but once again, people might be different in Colesberg, or people might just want to travel through and arrive in Johannesburg at last, because we all know it takes a lot of time to actually get to Johannesburg. Yeah! Reasoning from example is probably the most used reasoning structure. You know it. They ask you for examples every time you are sitting in a test or sitting in an exam or even writing your assignments. Now, juicy, surprising, wonderful examples, very relevant examples are the kind of things that you want to pull out of your bag of tricks. And please, look a little bit harder for good examples, because nothing is more persuasive than an illustration that uses a juicy and well thought out applicable example. Yeah! The last one, and you can see that I skipped here a little bit, reasoning from criteria to application. This is a reasoning structure that a lot of advertisers are using. So basically, before you're saying anything, before you're reasoning anything, you would find out a reasonable set of criteria. By the way, criteria is plural, criterion is singular. What I mean by that, let's say we are L'Oreal and we have a new shampoo. So we would first, before we start reasoning anything, go out into the target market and ask them, what would you like your shampoo to do? So Samuel says, I would like to have a shampoo that takes away dandruff. Pandulwazi says, I would like to have a shampoo that makes my hair smell nice. Whereas Nirvana says, I would like to have a shampoo that prevents hair fall. So now L'Oreal has a set of criteria for purchasing. And now in their advert, basically, they're going to offer the product along the lines of exactly the criteria that they have found out. So they would play into the three people's needs by saying, our shampoo makes your hair smell nice, it prevents hair fall, and it prevents dandruff. Here we go. Reasoning from criteria to application. Yeah! Guys, they love to ask you about the reasoning structures, and also for your real life. This is great content for you to keep in mind so that your argumentations and your persuasive attempts are having a bit of oomph and having a bit of substance to them. Please keep that in mind, and I see you for the next one. I hope you enjoyed it, Schnookies. Until next time, bye!